Welcome back to the Spiritual Uplevel Podcast. I'm your host, Jeri Cristine, and today we have with us Rachel Sofarelli with the St. Pete Salt Room. And I am excited to introduce all of you to salt and salt rooms and the benefits. I was blessed to be able to do a breathwork sound bath session at Rachel's location just a couple weeks ago, and it was so incredible. And we'll get into that in a minute. But Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to share you with some more of the world who haven't experienced. I had never experienced a salt room. I had never experienced one. I hadn't really even heard of it. And at first I thought, well, why do you need a salt room in Florida by the ocean where you can taste the salt in the air most days? And then I experienced it, and I do breath work all the time. And partway through the breath work I was leading, I was like, wow, I can breathe so deep and hold my breath for so long.
hmm
And I literally had to be like, hold it together, Jeri. You are leading this. And I mean, I was amazed at the effect of it. And so can you explain to our audience, first of all, what is a salt room?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a couple different types of salt rooms. The salt room that I have here is an active chamber, which means there is a machine called a halo generator that sits behind the wall and it actually blows pharmaceutical grade salt into the room. So while you're in the treatment, these microparticles of salt are floating around you all in the air and you're breathing them in. So that can travel your whole respiratory tract. A lot of people are familiar with wet salt therapies, like saline spray, things like that. Even nebulizers sometimes can have a saline solution in them. So those just travel kind of here from your
Yeah.
sinuses into your throat area. The benefit of the dry salt therapy in a salt room like mine is that it travels your whole respiratory tract, all the way from your upper sinuses all the way into your lungs. So lots of benefits that I'm sure we'll get into from there, but that's the gist.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. So, just to give people a visual, you have this beautiful building, and inside the building, you have some other thing offerings, which we'll talk about. But the salt room itself is a closed room. So the door is closed. There's salt on the floor,
Mhm,
like pretty thick, like if you were walking through sand, but thicker pieces of salt. And
mhm.
then there's super comfy chairs in there. And it, from sitting in the chair position, totally relaxed, you're blowing salt into that room for people to breathe it in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So let's get it before we get into the details of this. Rachel, how did you come to be working with salt?
I get that question a lot. So long story short, I have a family friend up in Waynesville, North Carolina, outside of Asheville, and she has a salt room up there. So she's been doing this for almost 10 years. I've been visiting her salt room when we go up there. The synchronicity of it all is that she was my mom's esthetician when I was a child and before she did the salt room. And then my dreaming of having a wellness type offering started with my esthetician, who's become one of my best friends, Kimmy, who I now share this space with. So she owns Ritual Skin Studio, and we own the building together and have both poured our heart-centered businesses into it. So I've just grown up kind of visiting the salt room up there the last 10 years and just reaping the benefits of it, trying the different treatments and enjoying it. And around the time that my husband and I were starting to think about building our family, we went up there for a visit and I was sitting in there and it just was like, I need to be doing this. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I asked Marisa, my friend up there, about it. And she told me, whenever you want to talk about it, I'll guide you through. And then we got pregnant and, life, and I stayed at my job, which I loved, and it just kind of kept popping into my head, like, you're meant to be in the wellness space, you have an offering to give that is needed in St. Pete. And so finally I succumbed to that, and we found the building, and I reached back out to Marisa, and she helped me from A to Z with the build out and the sourcing and training on all the treatments and information and all of that. So I just feel very grateful and everything to her that I'm here because of all the lessons that she's taught me and the help that she's given me.
Awesome. I love that you followed that prompting. It sounds like that prompting kept coming back and eventually you listened to it and followed your heart. And I am so grateful that you did. You definitely need to be in this space. Your energy is just being around you. Your energy is so clear and healing. So I love that. So how long has your salt room been open?
We're coming up on a year. I opened April 22nd of 2024. So we're almost at a year.
Nice. I feel like I'm so behind the eight ball here. Like you said, your friend has had a salt room for 10 years. And how have I never heard of this? I just moved here 2 years ago. We're here most of the time in St. Pete. And I'm from Omaha, and I don't think there's a salt room in that area. At least
I think they're becoming more widespread now. But when she started hers, it was definitely on the forefront. But this treatment has been researched for almost 40 years. It's very widely known in Europe because what started the idea of it was the salt caves, the salt mines in Transylvania and in the Himalayas. And people were wondering, why does my loved one who works in the mine never get any respiratory infections? Why do they sleep so well? Why don't they have inflammatory issues and their immune system functions so well? And so people started researching it. I think they started researching it in Germany back in the 90s and figuring out all the natural elements and how they can benefit you when they're traveling through your respiratory tract and getting on your skin.
So talk to us about that. Talk to us about the benefits.
Sure. So salt has a lot of natural properties that lend itself to be a really healing substance. I love finding healing elements of nature. We all know that nature is healing, and maybe different things to call to different ones of us. But salt is really cool because it's naturally antimicrobial, which is antibacterial, antifungal, and it's anti-inflammatory. So basically, nothing can grow on it. Like we live in Florida. Mold is a major issue. We just had all these storms. Mold literally can't grow in a salt environment. It's anaerobic. It takes the moisture out of the air. It takes the oxygen out of the air, and it doesn't allow bacteria and viruses to grow. So that lends itself to a lot of benefits when you're breathing it in a controlled environment like this, where it's pure pharmaceutical grade sodium chloride. The particles are the perfect size to float around in your respiratory tract and attract out anything sticky in there. So anything from, we talk a lot about, fragrances and phthalates and these sticky, chemicals that we're breathing in or we're applying in our products. It's going to attract that out and get it off the lining of your respiratory tract. It's really good for people who have inhaled any kind of smoke or pollution. And anyone with any kind of inflammation in your respiratory tract. So COPD and asthma and, allergies, sinus issues, old mucus plugs left over from illnesses. These are all things that build up in our mucus membrane of our respiratory tract, and it doesn't allow for us to breathe well and oxygenate our body. So when we can clean out that buildup, every breath you take now with a clean respiratory tract, you're getting oxygen to every cell in your body, more oxygen to every cell in your body. So that allows your cells to do their job. It allows for you to get better sleep. It's good for mood. It's good for repairing the moisture barrier of your skin. And of course, any inflammatory respiratory issue that you're having.
Wow.
It's a lot.
It's so interesting though. Like, so when the salt attracts out those things, does it then like go through your digestive system or do you breathe it back out?
So most of it actually is absorbed and eliminated out through your urine. But some of it will also may come up via coughing or sneezing. You may expectorate it if it's more mucousy and in your upper respiratory system.
Okay. So I'm sitting here thinking like salt has kind of a bad rap because of salt in your food. And so I guess that is where I'm thinking like how my perception of salt was before. Although I will say that I have said since I was in my early 20s on spring break in Cancun, where I experienced this firsthand, salt is like the salt water in the ocean is the best cure for a hangover. And I have heard that it's like in other countries, some people will send their kids to like swim in the ocean if they have a cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just, I just started learning that. So that makes sense. What is pharmaceutical grade compared to even like healthy Himalayan salt that you can buy at the store?
That's a good question. So first, I just want to touch on the fact that I know salt gets a bad rap. I have people ask all the time, is this going to increase my blood pressure? No, you're not digesting it. Also, it's the tiniest little amount you could even imagine that you're breathing in.
Right.
It's a high concentration in the air compared to what you would normally get, but it's not like you're eating spoonfuls of table salt, which also is iodized salt. So that is different than this. But as far as healthy salts go, people are talking a lot about electrolytes and using healthy salts and Celtic salt and sea salt and all of these things that are actually really good to remineralize our systems when we're depleted of minerals, which is why it's good for hangovers. But the salt that I use in the salt room is just pure sodium chloride, NaCl, if you're into the like periodic table. Whereas Himalayan salt and other types of sea salts and things have other trace minerals, which are a good thing a lot of the times when you're trying to use them for cooking and remineralizing and electrolytes and things like that. But when you're breathing it in, the pharmaceutical grade salt is great because you're not contaminating with anything else. You're just purely using it to attract out anything bad in the respiratory tract and get rid of it. The Himalayan salt, I think, has like 92 or 99 trace elements in it.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. So, yeah. Okay. So yours is pure salt, pharmaceutical grade, and it goes into our system and cleans us all out. And I can, like I kind of touched on in the introduction, I experienced that. I lead breath work, I teach breath work, I do breathing all the time. And just a few minutes into it, I was amazed at how deeply I could breathe, and how full I was. And every single person in that sound bath and breath work experience, which was only 1 hour total from start to finish, every single person commented that they reached the deepest level of meditation that they had ever reached. And I think a lot of that was from how deeply they were able to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple people did have like coughing and sneezing come up a little bit, but it wasn't a lot. But everyone commented as well that they'd never breathed so deeply.
Yeah.
And then while you were talking, I realized I was struggling with headaches, especially in the morning. And, we live on the bay. And so there is not so much right now, but for months, there was piles of trash on people's front yard because of after the hurricane. They had to take everything out of their house from drywall to furniture and clothing. And you just smelled the mold in the air. And so I'd been suffering from headaches. And while you were talking, I realized I have not had a headache since that one experience. Yeah, it's amazing to me because that was one time. Like, what do
Yeah.
you normally recommend people? How often should they come? And is that common to experience that level of change in just one experience?
Yeah, you're going to get the benefits right away for sure from one treatment. And like you said, the room, it takes a couple minutes to fill up with the salt, but probably within the first 10 minutes of the treatment is when you're starting to really breathe that in and notice the difference in the depth of your breath and opening and reducing that inflammation. As far as the recommended number of treatments goes, it depends. There's a lot of studies that have been done to indicate what it takes to get to clearance for people with different conditions. Obviously, the more severe conditions, it's going to take a little bit longer. For things like COPD, depending on the stage of it that it is, it could be 12 to 24 treatments, and you can do those multiple times a week. There's really not a limit. I try and do a couple of treatments a week just as a preventative for my immune system. I bring my son in here at least once a week. But for most people, what they're doing is, I got a cold, it's lingering, I have some extra like bronchitis or laryngitis or whatever, I just want to nip it in the bud. And for that, it's typically, the recommendation is 3 treatments as close together as you can. So within a week or 2 if possible, doing those 3 treatments back to back to really kind of nip any acute symptoms in the bud. But like you notice, it really does work just after 1 treatment, especially if you're just experiencing something mild, maybe just a little bit of inflammation, exposure, things like that.
Wow. That's incredible that you can treat COPD.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of my good friend's father passed away from COPD just a little over a year ago. And that is a tough road.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. So somebody with any type of health condition, or specifically lung type of health conditions, can come in and you can give them a treatment plan to assist with what they're already doing.
Yeah, I have a chart at the front. I should have brought it in so I could show you, but it kind of breaks down a bunch of different types of conditions and what the recommended treatments are based on the research for those. And it's not to say like, don't see your doctor if you have COPD. It's
Sure.
just, this is a natural way to support your system and honestly reduce, if not eliminate, a lot of those symptoms that come along with it. Obviously, certain things are going to need medication in conjunction, but a lot of stuff also doesn't. I've had people come in here, with allergy flare-ups and asthma flare-ups, and they're doing this, and it's getting at a systemic trigger of inflammation in your respiratory tract and maybe in the rest of your body that certain other things are maybe just more of a band-aid for, like steroids or things like that. I'm not saying those are never needed. They are sometimes. It's just, we have things in nature that can support our systems with a lot less side effects. And also, some of the benefits of being in here are nervous system related. Like, you're getting the physiological benefits, and you're also setting aside 45 minutes to an hour of reduced stimulation. You're sitting still. You can obviously bring your phone in if you want, but I always encourage people to just leave it outside if they feel comfortable and just really reap the benefits of this environment. If you're into, the metaphysical properties of salt, there's a lot of clearing and cleansing properties of salt as far as like an energetic standpoint goes. So there's just a lot of goodness in here.
So cool. I am interested in the metaphysical benefits. The podcast is called the Spiritual Uplevel Podcast, but I wanted to have you on here because cleansing your body in a healthy, natural way, it increases your connection to source and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it just uplevels everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really beautiful. What other offerings do you have? Because I know when I came in, you were doing a foot bath detox.
Yeah. So I have the halotherapy, which is what we've been talking about with the salt room. I do the foot detox bath. So that also uses a little bit of salt. It's an ionic treatment. So it uses an electrical current to draw out toxins from the blood and the organs. And that's really getting at supporting your body's natural ability to detoxify, keeping in mind that we overload our systems through lifestyle choices, a lot of things outside of our control. We have exposures of toxins from when we were inside our mothers as babies, and also her entire lifetime, because our egg was inside of her for her entire lifetime. So there's a lot of studies now coming out about, I'm sure people know about like microplastics and placentas and things like that, but it really is all of that toxic buildup that we start getting exposed to without any control over it. So that treatment helps us detoxify the blood and the organs and draw out any buildup that our body hasn't been able to rid on its own, which allows us to function more efficiently thereafter. It also is really good for the immune system. Inflammation, if you hear a common thread here, there's a reason for that. Yeah, inflammation and immune functioning are definitely going to be supported, as well as your nervous system, while you're here at the salt room through any treatment you choose. So that's the ionic foot detox bath. That's a 30-minute treatment. And then for most people, it takes around 14 to rid your body of a lifetime buildup, but it depends on some different factors. It can take less, it can take more. And then I also have a healing physiotherapy wand. So that device combines far infrared warmth, which is what we get from the sun. It has red and blue photon therapy in it. A lot of people are starting to learn about red light therapy and the benefits of that. It has an optical quartz tubing that the warm air travels through to deliver the treatment. So there's a lot of benefits to that crystal from a clearing standpoint as well. And then it has pulse electromagnetic fields, PEMF. So if you've heard of like grounding mats, healing mats, grounding outside, the point of that is that we're bombarded with a lot of high frequency energy through technology and Wi-Fi and all these different things going on around us with our modern society. And our cells don't really know what to do with those, how to process them. So the PEMF frequency is a much lower frequency. It mimics the vibration of the earth, which is really healing for our cells. And that is great for inflammation. It helps repolarize our cells. So when our cells are all stuck together, there's parts of that cell membrane that aren't able to do its job because it's smushed up like sardines against something else. When we repolarize our cells, now the full surface area is able to do its job and function better and heal. So the healing wand treatment, I have a lot of people come in for that who have pain or inflammation. So rheumatoid arthritis, gout, but it's also just a really great full body anti-inflammatory system. I hit all the lymph exit points to make sure that our lymph is flowing well and releasing as it needs to, which is really important for detox. So yeah, those are the 3 treatments that I have.
I can attest to grounding, anything like that. I had surgery on my lower back a decade ago and had pain for years. And like chronic pain is nothing that anyone should have to live with. But most chronic pain goes back to inflammation in the body, right? I started grounding and right away noticed a difference with that. So that's so cool. And I've heard from someone else who did some treatments with you that you can do that while you're in the halotherapy. Is that correct?
So I do have healing mats on a couple of my chairs. So I sell the mats, and then I have the wand treatment, and I sell the wands as well. So for people who want to use it daily, they can have that option. But I have 2 of the mats out on the chairs for people to experience during halotherapy, and the mats have all those same healing frequencies as the wand. It's just a different delivery system. That's passive, so you're sitting on it and you're receiving all those benefits. And the wand is active, so you're moving it. It kind of looks like a blow dryer, for lack of a better explanation, and it's delivered through warm air. So I'm pointing that during the treatment at different areas of the body and getting the lymph flowing and focusing on areas of pain and inflammation. Whereas on the mat, you sit on it and your body kind of soaks in the healing properties.
Do people notice a difference with that right away?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I have a young man who comes in with gout flare-ups, and it's typically in his toe. He does the foot detox and the wand treatment. And there was one day where he had an ankle injury, so it kind of had moved into that area, and his ankle was super swollen. So we just did a 10-minute wand treatment with him, and the swelling immediately was visibly reduced, like right away. He said he felt relief right away. So when you feel better, obviously everybody does from the treatment, but when you see something like that, where you're visibly seeing the inflammation go away in front of your eyes, it's pretty incredible.
yeah, that's really cool. And then I noticed you have a salt lamp in the background there. Tell us about you sell them, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so what are the benefits of a salt lamp? I know I always enjoy having one around, but I don't know like
Good vibes.
yeah, good vibes.
Yeah, so good vibes is true. When we warm the salt rock, which is what the salt lamp is made out of, it sends some salt particles out into the air. So similar to what the halotherapy is doing in our respiratory tract, it's going to attract moisture, dander, any kind of pollutions or irritants in your air to the salt, which makes it heavy and it drops it down to the floor. So you're no longer breathing it in and you can clean it up. But it also releases negative ions too, which is the good vibes, good energy comment. And it looks really nice. Salt lamps are just really great. There's lots of different colors and shapes. So yeah, depending on the size of the rock of the salt lamp, it's going to help purify the air a certain radius out from the lamp.
Nice. Yeah, they are so pretty. We were there around Valentine's Day and you had some in the shape of a heart too.
Mm-hmm.
So, so pretty. I love it. Um, so Rachel, how, like, if somebody's coming for their first time, what do you recommend that they do to start off with? What's your first recommendation of the treatments that you offer?
That's such a tough question. It really depends on the person. People have been really drawn to the foot detox. My personal favorite is always the halotherapy. I just think that there's something about setting aside that 45 minutes, focusing on your breath or taking a nap if you even need to. People bring books in sometimes. But I start every treatment for the halotherapy with a little guided breath. It's nowhere near the beauty of what you offer in your breath work, but it's just that permission to forget everything else that's going on in the world, remember yourself and your body, and just tune in. We do a little kind of nidra like body scan. Just tune in. Is there anywhere that's tense? Let's, exhale that out as much as we can. Allow the chair to support your body. And then just take some deep breaths. Notice how when the salt enters the room, that breath is deepening and opening up, just like you noticed during your experience a couple weeks ago. So I don't know. I just think sometimes we need a little bit of permission to relax and allow ourselves to just be and breathe. And it's just good for the body, good for the soul, good for the mind. So halotherapy is my top notch, but obviously people have their own priorities. And if you're worried about, toxic buildup, the foot detox is a great start. If you're having any kind of chronic pain and inflammation, the healing wand is a great start. I also have been offering since the new year what's called the wellness trio. So if you want to try all three, it's at a very reduced price. I think it's like 20 or 25% off if you do all three treatments. And that's a great way to sample each one and see what's resonating with your body, and remember maybe when you have different things come up, which one you would want to come back to.
Well, I think people are probably attracted to the foot detox because you can see it, like you said earlier, and it is shocking what comes out. Like sometimes I'm like, that looks thick. Like, how does that come through your feet? Oh my God. I highly encourage anyone who has never done one of those to do one. You will be shocked. I promise, no matter how healthy and clean you think you are.
Yep.
Because of all the things you mentioned, like the microplastics, they're in our food and they're in the air, and there's no way to get away from it anymore. And then who knows whatever they're spraying in the air, even just the mosquito repellent that they spray in the air, is so toxic for us.
I know. And I think a lot more people are aware of those uncontrolled exposures, and it's really easy to get in that fear spiral, which is not good for our health. We can get really unwell, nervous system wise, and even physically just from being in that fear state. So for me, it's just the acceptance of there are uncontrolled exposures in the world that we live in. What can I do as naturally as possible to mitigate those? And that's kind of where my treatments come in.
Well, you do a really beautiful job of that. And I just want to encourage anybody who is in St. Pete or visiting St. Pete to check out the St. Pete Salt Room. Easy to remember the name. And if you're not local, find somebody that is local to you and just try it out. I promise you will be amazed at how cool of an experience and just how you feel afterwards.
Thank you.
So, Rachel, I ask all my guests 2 questions before I let you go. And the first one is, what is one book that you recommend that all of our listeners read? And it doesn't have to do with salt, but it certainly can.
One of my best friends actually gave me a book called Salt, which made me laugh. And it's all about like the history and the benefits of salt, but that won't be the one that I recommend. I haven't gotten through that one yet, so it's a little dense. The one that came to mind is Martha Beck's The Way of Integrity. And I started reading that book a few years ago. Have you read that one?
I haven't. I'm writing it down.
Ooh, it's a good one. So it's definitely more on the side of, I don't want to say self-help, but it's like, it's something that you have to really engage with. There are prompts, reflections, things like that. But the main goal and premise of it is that your integrity is your authentic path, values, authenticity, whatever you want to call it. She uses the word integrity. And I just feel like what you said earlier to me about, my energy being, right in this space, I feel that too in my life. And I truly believe that everybody has that path that is their way of integrity, and that will allow them to express their authentic selves and just add more love to the world. And so that is the book that really kind of set me on the journey that it would be possible to live that way. And just every abundant interaction that I've had, people that I've met on this journey the last year, I'm so grateful. So that's my book rec.
Well, you did a great job of plugging that book. I definitely want to check it out because I'm always encouraging people to do what's in alignment with your soul. And it sounds like that's exactly what that is all about, being in integrity with your soul.
I think
And
it's a good way for people who are on more of like the intellectual, like societal driven path, like most of us are, until we get in tune with that. It's a good way to kind of like shift your thinking over to the fact that that is possible, and also what's best for you and the world.
nice. Having a bridge between those is good and much needed because it can feel like a really big gap when you start becoming awake and aware of everything else.
Yes.
The real world, it's so funny. The societal world, which most people call the real world, you soon discover that's not the real world. And there's a way to bridge those two together. So thank you for that recommendation.
You're welcome.
And then my final question is, what is one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
I think just the power of love. I think we could joke and say how healing salt is, but no, I think that there is enough love and light in the world to heal a lot of the darkness if we open ourselves to it, and we're also willing to share it with people around us. And yeah, I just think the more that we can focus on optimizing the way that we feel and the way that we express our love to anyone that we interact with, the world becomes a better place. So
Yeah. And all love begins with self-love.
yes.
And it seems to me like what you're offering there at the St. Pete Salt Room is an opportunity to really give yourself some love.
That's my hope. I mean, that's my dream, that everyone walks out of here just feeling even the tiny bit better than they did before, and just having more love for themselves and more gratitude for all the blessings of life, and sharing that with the people they interact with.
Well, that was definitely my experience with you and your offerings. And I really hope that our listeners come check it out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you. I loved it.